Hebrews 4:14, just through verse 16. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin. Therefore, let us draw near with confidence to the throne of grace so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in a time of need. That will be our working text. I want to start off with this bit of an introduction. We get to the point where our strength isn't enough. Before we start talking about that, though, there is a place for just grit, if you would, that place for pushing through. Paul said, suffer hardships with me as a good soldier of Jesus Christ, there in 2 Timothy 2:3. There are other verses such as we must deny ourselves, take up our cross, and daily follow Christ. There is a place for that, saying, I got it in me. It's time to pick it up. It's time to push through. It's time to do what a man or a woman is supposed to do. And then sometimes we get in over our head. Sometimes it's beyond our ability to do anything with. And we have a good verse on that one also. This verse doesn't get a lot of play. I think, one of these days I've got to do a lesson on this verse. So this is Paul writing in 2 Corinthians 1:8. He says, for we do not want you to be unaware, brethren, of our affliction which came to us in Asia, that we were burdened excessively. I want you to pause there just a second. Beyond our strength, so that we despaired even of life. And so those are responsibilities and duties that we have to stand up and be men and women and to carry our load and do the things we can do. And then there are times in life that hit us and we can say, like Paul said, we were burdened excessively. We were beyond our strength. We even despaired of life. And I want to tell you that that is where this lesson applies. So I'm going to do one little more warning before we get into our text. This is not a sermon about lowering responsibility or excusing laziness. I'm afraid we live in such a time of so many wonderful conveniences, and they are wonderful, and I don't want to get rid of them. But we have so many wonderful things around us that so many people have become soft and lazy, and pardon my kind of bluntness, crybaby-ish. And if you were to say something to some of these young kids nowadays, like our parents said to us back in the 80s and the 60s and the 70s, we would be reported to some kind of government department for abusing our children. In fact, that statement is so true that just yesterday, as I was whiling away the time, wasting my time in those little moments where you're just kind of goofing around on your phone, there's a little short series of videos right now going around about what it was like to be raised in the 80s and the things your parents said to you. And it was so funny because it was true. Now, it was true for me because I was one of those parents in the 80s. And I thought, oh yeah, I remember saying that. I said that too. You want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. You know, all those things there. So I don't want anybody to walk away from this lesson going, oh, well, I can ease up and I don't have to. No, let me back up. This is for those times when you are beyond strength and you are despaired and you're burdened excessively. That's what we're talking about. That's what Jesus is there. He's not there to do what we're supposed to do, but He's there to help us when we're beyond what we can do. And that's a first point where you just have to be honest with yourself about it. So in Hebrews 4:14, as we already read, we hold fast because Christ understands us. He has been through the walk. He has walked a walk that you and I cannot even imagine. We like to fantasize about Christ and all the things that He taught, and that's fine, but the fact of the matter is you and I have never suffered anything nearly close to what He suffered or lived the life that He did. And we go back to Him because He does know, He does understand, He has walked the walk, and then we can do it in harmony with Him. This is a team effort. You do what you can do. You carry your load. And then that which is beyond your load, like Paul said in Philippians 4:14, I can do all things. And he didn't say through my own strength or my own grit or my own ability. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Again, it's a cooperative effort there that this is what we're supposed to be doing. So Jesus isn't looking to criticize us or to kick us out. 2 Peter 3:9, he would say he doesn't want any to perish. So we're all his offspring, as Acts 17:26 through 28 would say. And he doesn't want to lose any of his offspring. He doesn't want to lose any of his children. He wants to get them all home to heaven. And so he's not against us. So the trick is to trust that Jesus is with you. He is on your side, and he is madly, insanely, crazily, is that a word? In love with you. So much so that when it came time to carry his cross, he picked his cross up and he carried it to Calvary, knowing the sins that we would commit, knowing the kind of people he was dying for. He does that. And so we learn to walk with him. We learn to get in step with him, and we learn to take the training, and we understand that when he says we're going to get mercy to help and grace to help in a time of need, that doesn't mean all the pain's going to instantly go away. It's not magic fairy dust or anything like that. It's that ability to get up and walk across the pain or to walk through the pain. It's that ability, we say it in Psalms, whether that 23, is that verse 4? I forget my verse exactly. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. It's that ability to walk through that valley. Whether it be a short valley or a long valley, it's about going through the valley and learning the lessons of the valley. It's about having that relationship with him. And when we come before his throne of grace, it's not a performance review. And that ought to take some pressure off. That ought to help you understand it's about love. So we continue to draw nearer and nearer and nearer. Or like the song Jeff led a couple of songs back, nearer, still nearer. That's it. That's the idea. We're always trying to close that gap a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more and get closer and closer. You know how I say it. I want you to get so close to Christ that there is no gap. There's no place for Satan to squeeze in between you and Christ. You get that close. Don't give him an opportunity. So we have this great high priest who knows because he's been there. And I think that's fantastic. And you start putting that more and more in context. If you'll meditate on that this afternoon, you don't want to know at the level Christ knew. He knows our human experience. That was in verse 15. Who can sympathize with our weaknesses because he was tempted in all things just as we were. So he entered humanity. That would be John chapter 1. Early in the chapter there, we said in the beginning the Word was God and the Word was with God. And it goes on to say later on in that section, the Word became flesh. And he came here. And he experienced all those things that we experienced. So he didn't just visit it. He was here. Now that Matthew 4 reference, we won't read all of it, but turn over there to Matthew 4. This is the temptation in the wilderness. Let's start at verse 2, and I'll just read a few of these, I think. And after he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he became hungry. Okay, pause right there. How many of you going to get hungry if I preach too long? Right? How many of you ever fasted 40 days? Okay, I know some people raise a hand, don't literally raise a hand on. How many of you have done a water fast for like 5 days, right? Or maybe you did a fast for 2 days, maybe 1 day. And maybe some of you intermittent fast. That's a whole new thing too. And so we started, but no, he did it for 40 days and 40 nights. And he became hungry. Now after that stretch of fasting, then the tempter comes. When he's at his lowest. His physical strength is at its weakness, and he starts to tempt him with the food temptation there in verse 4. And then he tempts him with the pinnacle of the tabernacle and bow down and worship me. And then, of course, he goes on from there. And so he knows. Now, in 8:20, Matthew 8:20, that's where he says the foxes have holes and the birds have nests. Okay. Man, I got a rough life. I've got it hard. Let me tell you, I had to buy new tires the other day. You know what? And I didn't really, but I'm just making that up. Do you know what new tires cost? They're like $300 a piece. And I got my new tires and I put them on my multi-10K $1,000 car, whatever I'm driving. Went back to my 3-bedroom home with heating and air. You get the idea? Tell me we're suffering. I will agree that managing financially in America is tough. It costs a lot to live in America, doesn't it? This is not a cheap country. But I'm not about to have the audacity to compare my financial management challenges while I live in a 3-bedroom home with heating and air and streaming TV to Christ when he said, the foxes have holes and the birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. When I say he knows, he knows. He understands things I can't get my head around. And so our weakness, whatever it happens to be, is not a barrier to Christ. He's not looking at us, condemning us, trying to shame us or belittle us. He's been there. He understands the temptations, and he's trying to help us get through them. He is our shepherd. I think we sing a song about Jesus, the loving shepherd. And so we have pain, we have hurting, we have sorrows. These come through life at different times. And I just want to say here, it's not a failure. If pain and hurting and sorrow is a failure, then you're going to have to look at Jesus and say Jesus was a failure because he sorrowed at times. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I would have gathered you under my wing as a hen does her chicks, but you would not. Or at the grave of Lazarus, if you would. Oh, sorrow's not a failure. Hurting is not a failure. When Angela comes out of her surgery tomorrow, if they don't dope her up good, she's going to be a little uncomfortable. And I'm going to tell you something. That's humanity. That's not a failure. For us to go through a physical pain and think, oh, if I was a better Christian, this kidney stone wouldn't hurt. That isn't true, is it, Chris? I don't care how good of a Christian you are. Kidney stone's going to hurt. I don't care how good of a Christian you are. You're going to get to an age where every time you get up out of the chair, you're going to be reminded you have arthritis. That's just the way life works. And those things don't make us a failure. And I think sometimes we place an expectation upon ourselves that is so unrealistic and idealistic. They would think, well, I must not be a good enough Christian. Jesus can't really love me because, and then we fill in our own blank. No, he's there for when we are in those places that exceed our physical limits. That's what it's there for. When we've been burdened beyond excess. When we are at that point of despair. So again, not excusing laziness or sin. This is just for clarity. We have physical limits. We have physical weaknesses, if you want to call them that. I'm not sure that's the right word. We're finite beings. God's an infinite being. This flesh is going to grow old and die. You can't stop that. Hebrews 9:27, you can use Psalms 90:10, but it's going to happen. Your mind. You can't remember everything, can you? Well, I wish I could remember that verse. I wish I could remember what I do too. I've been preaching since I was 25 and I still can't remember where all the verses are. Why? Because I'm not infinite. I'm not all-knowing. My memory fails me. And I found out the older I get, the more often it does that. Well, an old friend used to say, my forgetter's the only thing that's getting better. And now I know what he means by that. So those are the areas where Christ is understanding. So now if we're lazy, then think of Revelation 3:15 and 16, where he spews the lukewarm out. But he understands. He knows. And he's on our side. And so we're really seeking a connection with Christ. Back to the song Jeff led, or any verse you want to use. Nearer, still nearer, close to thy side. That's the point of it, getting closer and closer and closer. It's not being some kind of superhero. I like Marvel Cinematic Universe. I like Iron Man and Spider-Man and all of those different things, the Hulk. I think it's fun entertainment. Well, that's all it is. It's pure fiction and entertainment. We can't do that. We're human. And as the years roll by and our mileage adds up, our humanity shows more and more. we ought to do is, what was that reading we had yesterday in Leviticus 19? I want to say off the top of my head it was 32, where it said, rise before the gray head and honor the old, right? We ought to honor that mileage in ourselves and obviously in others also. So we come to him in trust, not in embarrassment. We're not embarrassed to go to Christ. He understands. So we draw near that confidence. That's again back to Hebrews 4:16. It is not a performance review. This is confidence in Christ's love. He is trying to get me to heaven. He is trying to get you to heaven. He is doing everything he can but violate our free moral agency to get us into heaven. The only thing he needs is our cooperation. Our real, honest, sincere, enthusiastic cooperation. So we approach him because we're weak. I can't do it all. How many times we do Jeremiah 10:23? It is not a man who walks to direct his own steps. Or Proverbs 28:26. He who trusts in his own heart is a fool. There again, that's talking about the limits that we have. And so to fill up those limits, because my flesh cannot fill up those limits, I can't do it on my own. I need something that is beyond the flesh. And what I have is a great high priest. Or as Paul would say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And he completes and he fulfills us. Now this is not a greatest analogy, because analogies are hard to do when you're talking about the spiritual. But how many of us understand that in a good marriage, she fulfills him and he fulfills her? And together they have a symbiotic and they have a synergistic energy that is more than either one of them. It's kind of like 1 + 1 = 4 in a good marriage. Now, if you understand what I'm saying, then you get the idea here. We approach Christ because we're weak and we need that fulfillment and we need that somebody else to bring us up. So he gives us help based on our need. Got to pause there again and say, not on our want, but on our need. So we approach him boldly because he loves us, and he does love us. How can you have Calvary without love, right? So he's our shepherd. He's training us. He's walking us through the valley of the shadow of death, and he's helping us. So what I say ticket to the throne here is not our absolute perfection in everything, because as we already pointed out, you'll never be intellectually God's equivalent, be that perfect. Physical strength, you're going to die. That's the way that works. And I don't know how to explain our emotional situation. Sometimes we just wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Some days we're just on cloud 9 and the world is all great. Other days it's not so great. And the world didn't change. Not at all. It was just our perspective of the world. And I don't know how to tell you not to let that happen, because there's so much that goes on in a body that I think that's it, beyond it. So it's not that absolute perfection and we become superheroes. It's our total surrender. As Job said in Job 13:15, even though he slay me, yet will I trust him. That's the closeness that we're looking for. So we have that mercy and grace that's near the throne. James 4. Let's just run over there just a second. I got my eye on the clock. I know I'm starting to run out of time. I won't hold you too long, I promise. James 4:7, submit to God, resist the devil, he'll flee from you. Draw near to God, he'll draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be miserable and mourn and weep, and let your laughter be turned into mourning and your joy into gloom. Humble yourselves in the presence of the Lord, and he will exalt you. This is what we want to do. We want to get closer and closer and closer. We want to humble ourselves in the presence of the Lord. We don't want to rationalize our sins away. We just want to confess them. We want to mourn and grow and develop. So we all struggle. Now, I find this a little curious. Everybody I know struggles. Saint, sinner alike. It doesn't matter who they are, how close they are to God, how far away they are from God. They all struggle with life, and they struggle with basically the same things we all share from time to time. Now, isn't it better to do that nearer the throne and to be closer to God than to be far, 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 far away from God? Now, I would say absolutely. It's better to be as close to God as you can get. And yet most people choose to struggle and ignore God at the same time. We have a great high priest who sympathizes with us, and we can come boldly before the throne of grace to find mercy in the time of need. And most people go, no, I don't need that. I'm puzzled by that. Most people treat him like a spare tire and then wonder why it doesn't work. Because Christianity doesn't work that way. Part-time Christianity is self-delusion. It is faking oneself out, just pretending. And then when the situation gets tough, you find out you're so far away from God, it's just not helping anything. Nearness needs to be normal. Now, nearness is not absolute perfection in everything that you can analyze. That if that's required, ain't none of us got a chance. The grace you get, maybe some patience, maybe courage, maybe an open door, maybe a perspective you hadn't understood before, may just be a friend that comes up and puts an arm around you and says, I understand you're going through a really tough time right now, and just want you to know I'm thinking about you. It comes in a lot of different ways, and it can just be that little, just that little bit that gets us over the hump so we can get through those times where we are in excess and despair of life and, we're really struggling. It's available. God's totally willing. It's not a lack on His part. It's a lack on our part. I would say the lack is too many people want to treat it as a spare tire. I make the joke, a lot of people like to keep me on retainer because they know they're going to need somebody at a funeral, so I got to show up now and then so he'll preach my funeral. That's not really a relationship, is it? So the question is, will we come close to God? Will we get close enough to receive it? Joshua 24:15, choose you this day, and you get to make that choice. It's yours. Our final point, of course, faith is not passive. We choose to approach. And grace doesn't cancel out the effort. That's part of the problem in the modern theology, is there is this idea out there that grace does it all. You don't do anything. Well, that's not biblical grace, and we'll save the rest of that discussion for our Wednesday night. Drawing near to God is daily, hourly. It's that continual unfolding time. Can you learn to see God present right there? He's not just present here. He's present everywhere, every time. There's no time, no place He's not present. When we think He's not present, it's not that He's not present. It's that we've lost the perspective of His presence. Colossians 3:23, do all things as you're doing them for the Lord. Can you do that? See, it's real easy right now. Well, we're in worship service. Can you drive home as though you're driving home for the Lord and be aware of His presence while you're driving? Can you sit and relax at the end of a long day, when you finally get to sit down and just go, oh. Can you see that He's there too? And can you see He was there in every part of the day before you got to your recliner? That's the drawing near. It's really more about your perspective than anything else. So it takes a lot of courage. You got to avoid seeking what's easier. You got to take the challenge. The way to the top is through the valley of the shadow of death. The way to success, whether secular or spiritual, is through the hard times. That's the way it works. There's not an elevator to the top. You got to take the stairs, is what the motivational speakers say. So God knows us. He knows us inside out. He knows everything about us, and He still loves us. And drawing near doesn't have to just be an abstract theory. This needs to be something that is really personally real to you. I wish I could put that in better words. I'm working on it, but those spiritual concepts are a little hard to put into words sometimes. So what does drawing near look like in your ordinary daily life? Maybe it looks different in your life than it does mine. Maybe that's why I have trouble putting it into words. But it's there because He tells us to draw near, and He'll draw near. We sing about it. So the courage to come closer. The invitation is extended to every single believer everywhere. You want to get close to God? He says, come on. He doesn't look at anybody and go, no, you're too old, you're the wrong gender, you're the wrong race, you're the wrong this, you're the wrong that. If you're willing to get close to Him, He's willing to get close to you. That's what He wants. That's what Calvary was about. So you measure your faith, I would say, not by how many verses you can quote or how well your attendance has been or how many phone calls you make during the week. Those things are good. But it's really how diligently do you seek God in the daily moments. Those daily moments where the grind of life just rolls on. He's there. And he's there just as strong as he is any place else. So I need the courage not to look strong and rely on my own flesh is what I mean by that, but simply to seek God. And I take comfort in the fact that the throne of grace is not waiting for me to get perfect in every aspect that you can name. He's really just waiting for me to surrender. What's he look for? What is the greatest of all commands? That's at Matthew 22:37-38, right? This is the greatest command. Love the Lord with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. And that has to go from being a verse we can quote and an abstract idea to being an emotional relationship that we dwell in. So the last slide, obviously, let the nearness of Christ do what grit alone could never do. You're going to have times where you just can't push any further. You come to your end. You've got no more resources. That's okay. That's humanity. We're all going to be there at different times in life. And that's when Christ says, I can do all, Paul said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Question is, do you have that relationship? If you do, hang on to it, nurture it, cultivate it, get closer and closer. If not, let us help while you stand and sing.